Good morning. Good morning. How is everyone doing this fine, wonderful morning?
Really?
So, happy almost 4th of July. Do you guys believe that in a day, the year's half over?
Yep.
Like, blink. It's crazy. So, so today, all right, I am incredibly excited.
Good morning.
Okay. So today's going to be there's a bunch of stuff to go through. Today's gonna so Wednesday night was going to be a conversation, and then we ended up adapting it because Sue had an amazing couple here, so we wanted to make sure they saw. So it's kind of a combination of a lot, which worked out obviously perfectly because that's just how our lives work, right? It worked out perfectly. But what I wanted to do today is I'm going to kind of talk about the next 12 months. And there's 3 different groups of people in the room. There's people in the room that this will be the first time that you'll have kind of a clearer picture of what's going on, so you're going to go along with this ride. There's going to be people in the room that are convinced that they know exactly what's going to go, and some of the times they might hit some roadblocks. My suggestion is to just kind of go through and not guess where it's going to go, okay? And then there are some that know the story. We've talked about it. We've been in conversations. You've watched. You've been a participant, right? And the biggest thing that we want to make sure for that is that you don't feel like you're getting bored and today's a waste, because the ability to be able to communicate this conversation is vastly different than your ability to know the conversation. And this is a business of moving people. And so the ability to tell this story and the ability to be able to get clear, to really be able to articulate it, is 10,000 times more important than your ability to get the story. And a lot of us get really caught up in knowing something and thinking, I've done the work I'm supposed to do because I know what we're doing. But our particular business is the ability to move people. So if we can't move people to where we're going, then we're not growing this. Does that make sense? So this is far, the people that today could benefit the most are all 3 groups for vastly different reasons, right? Now, where some of the conflict comes in is when you're convinced you know it and all of a sudden something else comes in. The argument in your head, let those go. Okay? Just kind of go, oh. And for me, when I do, so, because I've been doing this for the last week or so, I've been telling the story, and what I've done is I've actually found sitting my own resistances in the middle of the conversations, and then I go back and debrief going, as I tell this and as I lay this out, this path makes more sense than this, but I thought this was the path it was going to be, but this one actually makes more sense. Well, you know what the silliest thing I could do is spend time trying to work out the path that isn't actually going to work because it was the path I thought it was going to work. Like, that's stupid. That's no other word. I don't like using the word stupid all that often, but all that would be for me is stupid. Trying to convince the difference. Does that make sense? Right. So hopefully my goal for this conversation is a couple of things. One, I want to jumpstart some of our emotions, right? I want the leadership team, I want the people in this room, right? Because we've been doing this for 4 years, right? And sometimes there can be fatigue that comes with this. And I really want us to see that in anything we do, we build things 3 times. We build it in our head, we build it on paper, and we build it in real life. Well, we are now live on the real life stuff. By the time we're done with this conversation, none of what we're going to talk about today is the theoretical we should be able to get this done. Everything we're talking about today is in phase 1 of actually done. Does that make sense? So the second part to this that I want is a lot of us do better when we know, why am I doing this? Right? there's a lot of learning that we get to participate in, right? There are challenges. And how many of you were busy before you showed up here, right? We had lives, we have responsibilities, we have stuff. There's a lot of things that our life was full before Primerica came in and said, here, let me fill it for you, right? Right? We weren't empty vessels with nothing to do, just, meandering through life, completely shallow and hollow. We had stuff. And then you walk into Primerica and like, yeah, all that stuff, that's great, but we have a whole nother group of stuff. And so we want to create this space where we create the want to people to integrate. Does that make sense? The third part to this is we've built a system where there's a space for everybody, which is fantastic. From our allies to our team owners, there's a space for everybody. But we're coming to a place soon where just because there's a place for everybody doesn't mean that everyone behaves the same way. Right? We want to create a space where our part-timers can be part-timers, where they pop in and they pop out, and they just participate. We absolutely want that space, and we want to make sure that we create that space for us and for our people. And we need to identify that if you and/or I want to go do something big, we can't pop in and pop out and expect something great to occur for us. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that balancing act of creating the space is critical, and I think we've done a really good job of creating that space. But we also want to be able to kind of light a little bit of a fire of, oh, the space is there, but not necessarily for me. Does that make sense? Right? In terms of, right, when you go to a grocery store, there's all sorts of stuff in the store. You're not buying it all. You're just using the stuff you're using, but it's all there because there's other people that come in and use it. So, and so kind of figuring out some of those places. And then the last one is I just want to wreck your life and I want to let you sleep for a little while. Because this is fun. And so we're going to do some review and some process, but this will be, for those of you that really enjoy my storytelling ability, you're going to have a lot of fun. And for those of you that like linear stories, I have Xanax that you could take. And maybe what you do is start different pages or different boxes in your pages and just like take notes on the 3 or 4 different stories that will be happening simultaneously so that you can like direct your attention to this story and then when I go to that story, because they will. Now when they come together, if I've done this right, by the time we're done, it'll be like, oh, click, 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 like I'm like Scooby-Doo, right? Just kind of, so. Okay.
Wayne's World.
All right, good. So, how funny though, that comes from Wayne's World, which came from Scooby-Doo. Okay. June 2015. Okay. 1 is 5 years. From the time we started this will be 5 years. Right? The ironic thing of this whole thing is it takes most small businesses 5 years to create something, and we will be a 5-year overnight success. Right? So we're going to talk about what it's going to look like next June. Now this June, 2014, we are at 0 IBAs in the base shop, 0 life business in the base shop, and 0 securities in the base shop. For June. So I want to tell the story knowing this and what this is going to look like. It's funny, I woke up yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. Like eyes shot open. And I asked this question. I go, it's June 2014. Do you remember June 2013? and where you thought you'd be in June of 2014. How close or how far are you in June of 2014 where you said and where you wanted to be in June of 2013? Because when we think about June 2015, not only do we need to figure out where we want to be, but best we figure out what we need to do to make that happen. Because here's the thing. We are almost exactly where we wanted to be in June of 2014. Even though these are the numbers. Because these weren't goals. These weren't anything we measured. What we wanted to do was have our language, have our systems, have our support systems, have our place, have the ability to grow and the ability to gather up. We wanted a group of people that we could start working with, and we wanted language that we could develop and grow, and we wanted an opportunity to be able to introduce ourselves to the country, because in June of 2014 is the convention in Atlanta. The convention in Atlanta is 1 year from right now. And last June, leaving the convention, Bob and I set a goal. We said we want to be able to introduce ourselves to the country in June of 2015. Which means we need to be ready to play at a high level in January of 2015. So the choices, the decisions, the understanding, everything we've done, we are where we wanted to be in June of 2014, even though I'd rather those numbers not be those numbers. Y'all understand they've never been those numbers before, but they just happen to. There's 16 different reasons we can explain, but at the end of the day, those are those numbers. Right? You and I got to ask ourselves, where do we want to be in June of 2015, and then what do we need to do to make that happen? So the premise of this conversation today is this isn't going to happen on accident. It's going to happen on purpose. I know what we need to do to be able to be relevant in January so that we're introducing ourselves to the country in June, which is get a leadership team to understand where we are and what the next year is going to look like so that we can do a hard reset on what we think is occurring, know what's going on, and go hit this. That is this meeting. So, this make sense? Yes. All of you will be in Atlanta. Okay, one of the things to do is just set it. Right? For a variety of reasons. One, you're really going to want to be there. Two, you're really going to want to be there. So, now, resistance might come up. Great. When I'm done in about an hour, I want you to ask yourselves again. I want you to measure your resistance. If an hour from now you're still equally as resistant, then maybe you won't be there in a year. But if in the next hour you're like, oh my God, I totally see what is going on, then we go from there. Does this make sense? Yes. So, now Joseph, you're gonna probably this conversation will remind you a lot of some stuff because we had pretty much this conversation, so this will be good research for you. So, you excited?
Yep.
So, understanding this is what we're building for, now we're going to go to a second conversation. And I want to, so Victor, I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to walk you through this because this will be relatively new for you and the rest of the room, right? This is an opportunity. If you know it, you'll hear it. You're going to hear how to deliver this conversation, kind of where this goes, right? But I want to walk you through the power of what we're doing and how we're doing it. Is that fair? Okay. So one of the things that we did is, and we talked a little bit about it, we just introduced the Advocate Pro to Victor, right? Almost done with this quiz, is doing a great job. Going to take his test in July. I'm really, really excited about that. Is we introduced the Advocate Pro, and part of the value of this was the language. And so one of the things that we really wanted and really have is a way to make sure that we can direct people on what it is that we're doing. Okay? And so I'm going to roll out, introduce some of this language to us and how we communicate it and the value of what we're focused on. Is that fair? Now, we call it our lineup. Basically what happens, now traditionally, little shift, normally, right, I've been going from this way to this way, right, and because that we had to introduce the value of this stuff, and then the last couple of days I've been doing it the other way, so this might be a little bit different for folks in terms of how it visually looks, but the conversation's exactly the same, because we're tweaking some stuff. But look, at the end of the day, Victor, what we're looking for are owners. If we strip it all away, we have a distribution company. What we want, and we call them team owners, independent offices, right? If we've got, right, the average McDonald's, you can pay $156,000 if you own it, okay? If you want to make $300,000, what do you have to do? Get a second McDonald's. If you want to make $450,000, what do you have to do? Get a one of them. If you want to make $600,000, what do you have to do? See, at the end of the day, there is a limit, right, of how many cars drive by and buy a Big Macs. And so if we want to grow, every business is about growing distribution. We call ours regional vice presidents, but we have some fun calling them team owners. See, ultimately what we're looking for is we want thousands and thousands of offices around the country because there's 70 million people that need our help. Is that fair? Okay, but one of the things we realize is we don't advertise, we don't door knock, we don't do that stuff. We only promote from within. But there's really only one way that we can create team owners, and that's by growing what we call captains, right? And one of the reasons why we go through this is, right, at our job, right, when someone has a job, most of us have no idea how to get the next free promotions. And we just go, you know, one day they're going to tap me on the shoulder. But that doesn't actually help us. We said, wait a second. But see, for us, we said, no, we understand that there's a way. In order to be a captain in our business, basically what it is it's somebody who we call starters who have teams because we're looking to grow offices. So if someone's got 2 or 3 different teams that are running their own deal, that are really kind of growing and developing, then they're learning how to not only work, but they're learning how to teach other people how to be independent. Does that make sense? Right? So the only way to get team owners is for a captain to say, you know what, I'm ready to step into that and be an owner. Which means we need, if we want more team owners, we need more captains. Is that fair? Now the problem is we can't run an ad for captains. I guess we could, but that would be a weird group that showed up, right? We said, look, there's only one way in our business to find captains. And since basically what a captain is a starter with starters, it would make sense that actually what we need is we need starters because we need someone to become a starter with 1 starter. Because if a captain is a starter, say with 3 starters, then a starter with 1 starter would be one before. And basically what that is they're players with players. They have newly licensed people that are learning how to do this. So we said, okay, wait a second here. So if we need more captains, and then we need to grow our starters. So if we need to grow our starters, the problem is our starters are players with players. So then if we want someone to become a starter, they need to be a player first, don't they? So we said, what's a player? A player is someone who's licensed. They've got their life license. They're actively working on their securities. They're developing their market, and they're learning points of access. Basically, someone who passed their test and says, I think I want to try to do this. This sounds good. I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to try to get my next license, and I'm going to actively do this. Now, that makes sense, doesn't it? So all of a sudden, we get somebody licensed, and our business is distribution, and since while they're developing their market, they go tell our story, they introduce points of access, someone else says, hey, I think I want to participate in this also. They join the business. Now all of a sudden they go through the process and they get licensed. This is how a player becomes a starter. Because they start having multiple players that are going through this process. Does that make sense? And then how does someone become a starter? All of a sudden, or a captain, they said, hey, this player here becomes a starter, and they start growing teams. And ultimately that's where our RVPs and our owners come from. Okay. Well, how does someone become a player? Because if they have to be licensed to be a player, then we actually need people that aren't licensed yet. We call that our roster. That's someone who's turned in their IBA. They're actively working on getting their license. They're seeing their top 10 and building their support system. So we're like, okay. We get people into the business, they're in our roster. We get them licensed, they become players. They start building a crew of team, they become starters. They start developing leaders of teams, they become captains. And they build a business where they become owners. Now all of a sudden, we can start pointing direction on what we do. Does this make sense? Like, okay. Now the question becomes, if we need more team owners, then we need more captains. If we need more captains, we need more starters. We need more starters, we need more players. We need more players, we need more people on our roster. If we need more people on our roster, where do they come from? We call our draft board. These are people who like and trust us. Why? Because no one's going to go in business with you if they don't like and trust you. And you know what? You shouldn't go in business. The greatest thing about the business that we're building today, I used to run a business that would almost attract anyone because we come from desperate, like we needed people. And so when you need people, you'll introduce and have relationships with people that you don't connect. Here we said, man, we got the greatest opportunity in the history of the world and a support system in place. Cindy, I only want you thinking about working with people that you like and trust. And if you don't like and trust them, man, you can offer them the greatest opportunity in the world, but you don't got to give your heart and soul to them, right? You're going to look for people that you want to connect with, because if you're going to pull the best from you and from them, that's important. Isn't that a fun thing to think about?
Yeah.
Right? They've heard our story. They think that Primerica could be a positive impact in their life. But there's a hurdle. Something's stopping them. Well, Brad, if they like and trust me, they've heard that there's 70 million people that are stuck, right? They think that Primerica could be a positive impact in life. Why is there a hurdle? You know how I know there has to be a hurdle? Because they're not on the roster. If there wasn't a hurdle, they turn in there. If they just like and trust us, saw Primerica as a positive impact, and understood what we did, they turn in the IBA. So then they go from the draft board to the roster. Right?
Right.
So if they haven't turned in their IBA, then there's a hurdle. Now, there's really traditionally only three. The time, the money, or the ability. Brett, this sounds good. I'm just really busy right now. Great. Does that mean they don't want to do the business? No, it just means right now the priority isn't this.
Right.
Can you cultivate, develop, and strengthen relationships so that when the timing's right, you're in the place to take advantage of it? And to help them? Yeah. Brett, I don't have the money. $99 is too much. Great. Over a 3-week, month, 2-month, 5-month period of time, could someone squirrel away $10 a week if they needed to be able to get this if it was something that was important to them?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Shouldn't we cultivate and develop the relationship so that when they're in a position to do it, they can still create that?
Yeah.
Brett, I just don't know if I can do this. Great. Can they do it? Yeah. What do? We tell a story and tell the thing. What do we need to do? Is help them understand that we're not door knocking and cold calling. We're not in sales. This is our opportunity to cultivate and develop relationships. Can most people do this business if they like people?
Yes.
Would you like and trust them if they didn't like people? So that takes care of a whole group. I don't like people. Well, then this isn't for you.
Right.
That doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you should go to jail or not go to heaven. It just means you shouldn't build people. Look, if you're scared that people are going to be better, smarter, or faster than you, you shouldn't do this. The secret of success is finding people smarter, better, and faster than you and overriding them. Right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I'm hoping that every one of you I'm going to do this, I'm going to build this to the best of my ability, and then we are going to attract great people that take this and go, we got the foundation built, here's how we're going to take it to the next level. Not a bunch of people who show up and go, hey, feed me, what else am I supposed to do next? Are you kidding me? No one's telling me what to do next. We're trying 97 different things, 96 of them don't work. Like, well, looks like this is the one. Isn't that fun?
Yep.
So we got to attract and surround entrepreneurs, not employees, not little birdies. Right? We got to attract people we like and trust and say, man, you got the ability, you just might not be able to see it yet. That's okay. That's okay. If I like and trust you, we'll spend years. If you're a jerk, we won't. Well, that's not very fair. It rains on the rich and the poor. Fair is not a measurement in my house. Right? Fair doesn't exist. You know why? Because all of you are smarter and better at me in certain things, and I'm smarter and better at you in certain things, and that's not fair. Wade's tall. I should be tall. I'm not tall. That's not fair.
You have better hair.
I have better hair. That's not fair.
Really not.
Right? Now, if I was as tall as Wade with this hair, that would really, really not be fair. And if he was as tall as he is with my hair, that would really, really not be fair. So it's partially not fair. Right? It just is. But if we get caught up on lack, we're spinning and not liking and trusting. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So now all of a sudden, like, okay, so what do we need to do? We need more people on our draft board. Why? Because when we tell this story, right, we know that it's a numbers game. It's 3 to 1. For every 3 people on our draft board, we're going to get 1 to break through that hurdle. They get on their IBA, and we know that they say, I think I might want to do this business. And so our job is to take them from I think to I know, I might to I do, from want to need to do this. And when we get people to break through this, through the relationships, they're going to get licensed. They're going to finish their hours. I know. Why? Because something snapped going, you know what? It wasn't that hard, but something snapped saying, you know what? Now's the time. And until it was time, it wasn't time. Guys, this is so critical. Nothing magical happened. Something snapped in Kat and she said, you know what? Doggone it, now it's time. And got it handled. So what can I do? All we can do is develop and strengthen a relationship until it's time. Keep knocking this thing down from I think I might want to no, I do want to. Does this make sense? And all of a sudden, so Kat's going to take a test. She's going to get licensed. She's going to be a player. Her and Don are going to build this thing. They're going to go through. They're going to start developing a market. They're going to develop the list. They're going to tell the stories. They're going to recruit and attract some people. What are they going to do? They're going to get people on their draft board who are then going to get on their roster, who are then going to become players. And when Don and Kat get people from their draft board to the roster of their players, now all of a sudden they're going to very easily transition to starter because they're going to have multiple players on their team that they're teaching to get people on their draft board and on their roster of their players. And then they identify 2 or 3 leaders that are getting good at developing their roster of the player, they're going to become captains. And when they've got this down, it's very easy to transition to owner. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So how do we get people on our draft board? Well, we have to like and trust them. They have to like and trust us, and they have to have heard the story. So we have to be able to tell the story. So we turn to our farm system. We have our now list, our hots, and our warm, that are yeses and sures, and our then list, which is our lukewarms and our frozens. And we drive all of these relationships to our bullpen. These are people that will say yes and hear us. Why is it important that they hear us? Look, there are people that will sit with us right now, but they won't hear us. If we tell them the story, we're telling them for our vanity, not for their ability to hear it. Does this make sense? Why is it important that they hear us? Because they have to have heard the story to get on the draft board. The only way to get on the draft board is that they heard the story. If they can't hear the story, they can't get on the draft board. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Then what do? We tell the story and we say the basis of the day is for you to get to know me and me to get to know you and find out if there's a reason to go to the next step. Some are going to say, yes, there's a reason to go to the next step. What is the next step? The draft board. Well, how do you know they went on the draft board? Because they like and trusted you because they sat with you. How many of you sit with people who don't like you? Or you don't like? They've heard the story. How do you know that? Because you just told it to them. They think that Primerica could be a positive impact life. Well, how do you know that? Because you just asked them. The basis today is for you to get to know me and me to get to know you and find out if there's a reason for you to move to the next step and learn some more. And they said, yes. Guess what that means? At that moment, they think Primerica could be a positive impact in their life. This isn't magic. Then you're saying, hey, let's transition to next. Let's get you started. And they're like, well, the well is a hurdle. So your job isn't to go, well, if you really want to win, then you'll get past it. Your job's to hear the doggone hurdle and go, okay, what's the game plan to clear the hurdle? Is this making sense?
Yeah.
Some will say, you know, right now it's just not for me. There's only 3 reasons why someone would say it's not for them. They're on a path they believe is going to work. Victor, if you believe that what you were doing at your job, what you were doing in your life was going to deliver every goal and dream you had for your family, are you here this morning on a Saturday morning? No. That doesn't mean you don't believe in it. Doesn't mean it's not good. That doesn't mean you don't support your sister. It means what you're doing, you believe is going to deliver for you. So why would you do anything else? I'm here and not anywhere else. You know why? Because I'm on a path. So someone else could come to me and say, hey, I got a great opportunity. I'm like, good for you. So do I. For me. Now, do we want to maintain a relationship?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the path of these are going to work. And don't you want great friendships with great people that are smart and focused, that have won, and that are on a path and winning? Don't you want to be on a path and win and have great relationships where you can collaborate?
Yep.
So those relationships are vital. Not, oh, you suck, that thing's not going to work for you, let me destroy our relationship because... But guess what? Not all paths work. Do you want a relationship with someone who's working on a path and it turns out that the path doesn't work? Yeah, because when the path doesn't work and the dust settles, you're on a path that's going to work. It's not that hard for them to go, well, shit, you've been polite and responsible the whole time. Let me hear a little bit more about your path. They're not motivated. Key word right now. It's traditionally these people. Have you ever gotten your clock cleaned? Have you ever gotten your clock cleaned professionally? Has there ever been times where everything you thought was going to work, or life, or emotionally, or spiritually, or relationship, where you're like, this is going to work, and then it doesn't work? Like, the moment you realize it doesn't work, you're a little raw. You're not necessarily real motivated to jump right back into whatever it is you were doing. Is that fair? Yeah. So you're maybe not that motivated right now. These people, when they find out that they're not, that the path's not working, not that motivated. Should you maintain a relationship with them? Yes. And the last one is there's a stigma about you or about Primerica. How many of you know somebody that still thinks of you the way you were 100 years ago when you're 4 iterations of yourself? You're completely different than you were, but they can't get past it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what you've done. Mm-hmm. With that person, it might not ever matter. Mm-hmm. Because every time you do anything that even remotely resembles what they think you were, it triggers all of this stuff in their head. Mm-hmm. They're not even willing to risk it. Well, guess what? The relationship can be, that's a stigma on you. You've got to cultivate and develop that relationship. There are going to be people that have tried Primerica. People have been gone to Target, and people have asked them, hey, would you do the business? Would you do the business? 57 times. And then you come up and start talking about the business. They think your business and that business are the same. Right. That's a stigma of Primerica. These people are not going to do the business. But is the access gap real? Yes. And are you passionate and focused on what you're doing? Yeah. If you recruit these people to your scout team, and say, look, one of the things you realize is we can't do this thing alone. We can accomplish more together than we can apart. You have goals and dreams, I have goals and dreams. What if we support each other? What if I got emotionally invested in what you're trying to get accomplished? You got emotionally invested in what I'm trying to get accomplished? And every 6 months to a year, we visited and just helped each other stay on the path that we're folks fighting for. You think we'd be stronger? Yeah. We introduced a strategic partnership in the scout team, and we run down that path. Why? Because ultimately, right, we're going to introduce the concept, we're going to develop allies, and we're going to develop advocates, and then at some point we're going to go, hey, we grow with teams. And we're going to develop a new list of folks that can get back on the bullpen and go tell this story. Some are going to be, right, some are going to say no because they're on a path, they're not motivated, they're in stigma, and some are going to say, yeah, I'm open to this, and we run our business. Why? Because the more people we can tell the story to, we can attract the ones that are attracted to the story. As we overcome and clear their hurdle, we get them through the process, the IDA. We overcome the I think I might want to, and the no I do want to. We get them licensed. We grow their confidence and their skills, and we lock in their advances. Once you're done with your hours, you never have to do them again. Once you're done with this test on Wednesday, Richard, you never have to take it again, right? Once you turn in your securities pack and you go through that process, you never have to do that again. Once you pass that test, we get to lock in advances of security. We get to understand that we have building blocks that we get to grow. The time that you spend over the next 6 months getting your life license and then your securities license, right, over the next 6 months, guess what? That same time, the first half of next year, you don't have to invest in any of your licensing. You now can take that same time allocation and invest it into growing your business. And now, all of a sudden, that's how we grow. It's not about spinning our wheels or starting over. It's about locking in the advances that we've got. Right? We start doing that. We start telling our stories. We start growing our team. We start growing our individual leaders. And we have a shot at our VP. This is our business. We can explain this to ourselves and understand what's going on very, very, very simple. This is not easy to do, but it's pretty simple, isn't it? So we sat back and said, okay, so one of the things that we want to be able to always be able to do is make sure that we understand how our business works. Done? So that you're never lost. Right? We talked about the key thing that we do is we get why. We write up our list. We identify and assess. We develop a game plan. And we execute that plan. For those of you who need to read. But it's executed, not just empty, but it's not understood. Why? What does that mean? When you're working with your draft board, you write up your list of your draft board. You identify where they are and assess where they are in the relationship. Are there 3 hurdles or are there 1? Are they close to the hurdle? Have they been? Has it been about the money and they're on their 3rd month? Has it been that they not sure they can take the test? Right? As we understand that, we develop a game plan for that specific person, and then we execute that plan. Look. Our convention leaders, 2015. We're going to write up a list. People were invited and encouraged to come today. Why? Because we wrote up a list of who's been here that understands that can process this information. Not everyone made it, but for the people who made it, wrote up a list. We identified where different people were at in this conversation. We developed a game plan. How do we make sure that people are clear on what's actually going on and where they fit and what's how we're creating? And I'm today in the process of executing this plan. Does this make sense? Yep. This is on everything we do. So we write up our lineup. We identify where our entire lineup is. We develop a game plan for our lineup. And then we execute that lineup. And then we dig deeper into each one of them. My suggestion is getting wide is a fundamental principle building block to growing your company in all aspects. It's a pretty good formula. Write up, identify, and assess, develop a game plan, and then execute that plan. We stay getting wide. Good things are going to happen. So, here's the theoretical of what's going on. Great. We now know where we know how people fit. Awesome. The problem is, none of us fit in a good little box. Reference points are key. But we said, look, what do we do? So we get someone on the roster. All right, so let's go real life now. So we understand the theoretical of the lineup and what we're doing. Let's talk. Is this making any sense? Yes. Is this helping? Okay. So we've got our roster. So what do we really want to do? Well, we need to get people licensed. We need them developing their market and their support system. And we need to get them confident in the conversations and the points of access in order to, when they're licensed, when they're a player. Right? So what do? We say, look, we sit down and we say, your top 10 is critical. When we get a new associate together, we get someone on the roster, we're like, your top 10 is everything. We want to build allies, we want to build advocates, and we want to build associates. We want you to have a support system. We want you to grow confidence, because as you go across the kitchen table, you see this thing work. The more often you see it work, your confidence goes up. We want to inspire you to grow your skill because we want you to realize that if you go on one appointment every 4 months, that one appointment seems overwhelming, but if you go on appointments back to back to back, you're like he said, the same stupid joke on the same stupid page, because then you realize it's not magic, it's just skill. And we want you to be able to grow your vision, where all of a sudden you start dreaming about, oh my gosh, if this happened here, imagine if, because we start feeding them. So all of these are benefits of your top 10. But then we said, okay, we're going to develop our market. We've got our hot and our warm and our lukewarm and our frozen, and the reality is this takes time. True. This becomes a dilemma. Because how do you increase your skill if there's no one to go see? That's a problem. I mean, we can sit and role play, which we should. And I mean, I did for years and years and hours and hours and hours and hours. And that works, but it's not quite the same. How do we grow our confidence? If we're done with our 10, and we're developing our market, and we're treating them, and we're building and developing these relationships, we have a problem. And how are we growing profit? If we're not going and seeing people because they're not ready for us to see them because we're cultivating a relationship, are we making any money? No. So now here's the dilemma. We're developing our market on the relationship side, right? But are we increasing our skill and showing that increased skill to the market that we're developing? Are we showing more confidence to them when the people in our market ask us, how are things going? And we're developing our market and we're learning stuff. Is our business, do they think our business is growing when we tell them, well, we're developing our market? No. How does the outside world measure growth? Profit. So we're not growing profit, and we're telling our market, which we're developing, that we're not growing profit, so we're not increasing our skill, and we're not growing confident, we're not getting confident. And the reality is, how open to most of us are coaching if we're not going, like, we show up to meetings and we can watch the videos and we can do all this stuff, but we're not calling and asking a coach questions because we're not actually doing things on our own. And so the only questions we're asking is, hey, can you tell me how to do this? Which is vastly different than, hey, I was working on this and this happened, and how do you get past this, and what about this? And interactive questions of support are vastly different than baby bird questions of support. Right? So all of a sudden, we're not increasing our coachability, we're not profitable, we're not growing our confidence, we're not growing our skill. But we're developing our market, we're just not sure how we're developing. So here's the theoretical, what we're doing. Here's the practical roadblock. Cindy, does this sound a little bit like your developed market? Honestly? Yadira? A little bit. We're trying. See, my old business looked like this. New recruits, licensed, and field trainers. And what we would do is we'd get new IBAs in, and we'd get them to go on 3 to 6 appointments right away. We got really good at it. Now, new people can't get paid any money, but they would do it, and we'd end up closing 2 to 3 sales, recruit 1 or 2 people. The new associate got paid none of that money because they're not licensed for it. Then they'd go through, and so we'd lose a significant number would go away, and then a few would go through the licensing process, and then they would get licensed. And then they'd have to close 10 sales over 2 to 3 months to become a field trainer. The problem is most of them honestly didn't have a market to be able to go do this because they blew through the market there, so by the time they got licensed, so now all of a sudden they cultivated this, and then a few stuck around long enough and recruited a couple people or went on a little blitz to become a field trainer. And then the field trainer would recruit new associates for them and their team and then go get the new recruits to go on a bunch of appointments. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Full-time, the answer to full-time was recruit a bunch of new associates and get them to take you to your market, because this is how you made $2,000 or $3,000 a month to pay your bills while you build a business looking for more field trainers that went through that process.
Right.
This was our business. And so this group of people would ask, well, I'm going on all these appointments and I'm not making any money. Like, why does that make any sense? And they go home to their spouse, and they go home to their friends, and like, how are they going? They're like, it's good, but I mean, like, yeah, we closed 2 sales last night. How much money? Wait, why didn't I make any?
Right.
So all of a sudden they're like, well, that sounds kind of weird. And then people would get licensed, and we'd recruit a couple people for them, but they're not field trainers yet, so someone else is taking them out. So the person who's licensed is like, so do I get anything from my team? We're like, well, no, you're not a field trainer yet. You got to go close sales and learn how to do this. You don't want them to learn. You don't want to be learning on someone else's business, do you? That's not fair to them, right? So the field trainer is undermining the newly licensed person to be able to drive the recruits so that the business can go, and their heart's in the right place, but they need to eat.
Right.
And people go to meetings saying you're either full-time or you're visiting. And so and you can't talk to enough people at your job, because you got to talk to 12 to 15 people a day. You can't do that at your job. And so if you're serious, you need to go full-time sooner. So now we get people to quit their jobs sooner. We get them to become field trainers, to start treating their new associates this way, right? To start blowing, so they alienate them and go. They alienate them and go. And they're slowly starting to starve over here, but it's okay, because as an RVP, if you have 6 to 10 full-timers that are all starving and all making $1,500 to $2,000 a month, the RVP's making 25 grand, and all these people care about is the fact that the RVP's making 25 grand because he's selling the dream. So these people stick around, focused, and committed because they're making 25 grand because they did it. So I want to make 25 grand. So they're talking to these people going, well, you want to make 25 grand, and you got to work through this process so you can make 25 grand.
Right.
And the RVP's constantly dodging fires because these folks are fighting with their spouse and going through, and they're saying, hey, just go get another number because you're one recruit away from an explosion.
That's why people don't like America.
This is why people struggle with Santa. And I ran it really, really well for a really, really long time. But no one in the country. They're running this system.
Right.
And I slept fine. Because I wasn't doing anything wrong. Because I went on 26 appointments before I got licensed, and I became a field trainer before I got licensed, and I put in the time, and I developed, and I gave away, and I ran the system, and it worked. And if you run this system, it works. Where it's legal, it's moral, it's ethical, because it works. So be careful judging this from a moral standpoint, because it works. And it's real. It's a legitimate path. Right? You intern at a hospital. You don't make any money. You work 8,000 hours. You do all sorts of different things. They teach you. They train you. They use you to death.
Right.
They make a shit ton more money. Lawyers, right, new first years, they don't pay them very much money compared to what they're billing. They burn them out after 3 or 4 years. The partners leverage the new associates. They know that most of them aren't going to make it through the system, but they don't care because the ones that run the system and play the game and get after it and bill and learn how to do it will make $500,000. And they're like, the guys making mainly the guys, but the guys at the top are saying, hey, if it worked for us, who are we to say it shouldn't work for you?
Right.
So before we get too critical of Primerica, this is traditional business. The difference is that Art built the greatest part-time opportunity in the history of the world. Guess what? I'm going to explain an amazing system here in a little bit, what's going to go on. About the same number of people are going to make it at the top. You know why? Because people are people.
Right.
Like, there were more people invited today that came to come today that said they were coming. They had intentions.
Right.
We don't love them any less. They don't love their family any less. People are people. Does this make sense?
Yes.
But The question is, how much carnage do we need to leave along the way, and how much more people can we reach if we create a different system?
Right.
You with me? So this is what we ran. But you want to know why this worked? Because this is a problem. You know what solves this problem is Target.
Right.
What solves this problem is Christmas business card calls. What solves this problem is booths and expos. Why? Because we need an influx of new people.
Right.
Why? If we can keep developing our market, the problem is we get new associates, we run through this process, they still benefit from it, that's all great, but they got to develop their market. And it takes time to develop their market. And during that period of time, they need to grow their skill, their confidence, their profitability, and their coachability, but there's no mechanism for it. This solves that problem on multiple levels. So we sat there and said, okay, how do we do this? Well, this is where we created the pool. I said, okay, wait a second. The first iteration of this conversation. I'm a pretty good recruiter. And if I'm purposefully, or any of us, if Wade, grew up in this system and purposefully developed his relationships in his market, got to regional vice president, created success, ran a little bit through this system while we set it up, but then has 50, 100, 200 advocates for him and his story. Does it make sense?
Right.
Wade could go meet, or I could go meet, or anyone could go meet with these folks and say, look, this is what we're going to go do. We're going to teams them, we're going to go through. And if a third give us one name, and a third give us none, and a third give us three, and we sat and had 150 copies, that's 200 recommendations, emails. Hey, Richard and Brett, I wanted you guys to meet. You know, Richard, I just haven't had a coffee with Brett. I really, really like it. He's got working on some great things. He asked who's incredibly motivated. I told him you were one of the most motivated people that I have ever met. I thought you guys might want to meet. I just wanted to introduce you guys yourself. I'm out of it from here. He sends that email to you and that email to me. I follow up with you. What's the likelihood of us going to coffee if you have a good relationship with Wade and you got that email? Pretty good. We go through, tell the story. The basis of today was for you to get to know me and me to get to know you and find out if there's a reason to go to the next step. You're going to say one of two things, aren't you? You're either going to say, I'm on a path, not motivated, or I've heard of Primerica, and I'm going to go look. Strategic partnerships. If it weren't for Wade, you and I wouldn't meet each other. And who knows who you're going to meet 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years from now. Do you mind if we maintain a relationship? You're going to probably say yes. Or, yeah, this sounds good. Put them on the draft board.
Right.
Now, if I'm really good at this and I've got 200, I could probably get 20 or 30 new associates on the roster in a blitz. You with me? Here's the dilemma. Can I train and help develop 20 to 30 people on the roster at the same time? No. I got the 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock on a Monday. Like I got 2 spots. So I'm doing one of 2 things. My old business, I'm saying, hey, Victor calls me and said, I got 2 appointments on Monday. Richard says, I got 2 appointments on Monday. My answer is, whoever has got it first is the one I'm going on, the other one you're going to want to move. So now I got Richard moving appointments. How does that help his business? How does that help mine? It doesn't. So we said, wait a second here. Victor, if you were licensed and trained and you knew what's going on, you're confident, skilled, and had that done, and Richard called, and I called you and said, hey, Richard's got 2 appointments on Monday, and you're one of my licensed players. You want to cover it? Would you go on the appointments?
Yeah.
Because you could get paid. Now, what happens is you get half of it, I get half of it, so we split it through because you cover the appointments. Now, guess what? If you go on those appointments, is your skill going to go up?
Yep.
But he's taking you to his brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and cousins, so they're close and they're tight and they're friends because that's who we're going to develop in our top 10, right? So now, is your confidence going to go up? Yeah, because you're talking to brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles, cousins, and telling the story. Are you trying to write a sale? No. You're locking in allies and advocates for Richard. So if they buy or join, great. But if they're just supportive, you win. But is there going to be a number that ends up doing business? Yeah, because there's 70 million people are screwed. So are you going to create profit? Yeah. And then guess what? Since you're training Richard, what's the likelihood of you debriefing the appointment with me if Richard's my guy? Really good. Because I got to make sure he's getting trained. Right. So you're breaking down your conversations, which means you're getting coaching. Real life fire coaching. Does this make sense? Yep. So now, as you're increasing your skill, your confidence, your profitability, your coaching, when you talk to your market, do you have things to talk to them about? Yeah. How's it going? Oh my gosh, I just went on 3 appointments. This guy's unbelievable. He's doing this, this is going on with these people. And you're able to tell the stories. You're able to give your scouting report of what's going on in your business. And they're like, that's fantastic. And you're not asking them to do anything. Does this make sense? Why? Because we ultimately want to be able to grow this. And then your goal is to develop your market and recruit Frank on your team. And now all of a sudden, right, I call you and go, hey, Joseph's got 2 appointments. And you're like, I can't, I got 2 appointments. But you know, Frank just got licensed and trained and he could probably do it. So now you got people on your licensed team covering the pool appointments. So now your overriding business you didn't even create because you're creating leads. And we can grow and develop. Does this make sense? Yep. So this, the pool, becomes the answer on how we develop, market, and run this business. So that there's not this wasteland here in the middle. Right. You with me? Again, theoretically, this is clean. This is clean. It makes sense. It works. There are 2 dilemmas. Dilemma number 1 is it's not very inspiring to our players because if it's onesies and twosies, people don't measure loss. Like, we only get running when things are bad. Right. Like, how many of us have all gained weight before? Right? We've all gained weight. Like, have you ever gained a little bit of weight and you're like, I know I'm gaining weight, but you don't actually, like, you recognize the fact that you put on a little bit of weight, like not a lot, but a little bit, like things fit you a little bit differently, but you don't actually do anything about it. But then there's and we all have this, I think, where something happens, something feels different, and you're like, oh no. The problem is, if we would have actually started when we first recognized it, we'd have way less work to do. Right. But we don't. We wait until we're in the uncomfort zone. Now we have to not only, but do we just go, if we're really good, do we go just from the uncomfort zone to the comfort zone? No, we go to the uncomfort zone back to where we wanted to be in the first place. So we have to get back to 0 and then lose it, which is stupid. It's stupid. And yet, how many of us have behaved that way? Guess what? It's silly to not get ready when you know this is coming, but sometimes it's hard to get ready when you know something's coming, but it's out there and it's not that big and maybe it'll happen. So that's problem number 1 with the pool. Is most people, like when they're boogie boarding, it's hard for them to figure out that they want to start swimming for the 3rd wave, right? They're always swimming for the 1st wave, and that's why they keep missing it, because if you're going to boogie board, you actually need to see the 3rd wave out and start getting prepared, because pretty soon the 3rd wave is going to be the 2nd wave, and the 2nd wave is going to be the 1st wave, and you have to be in position and at the right speed to be able to take advantage of it. But most of us only react really to the 1st wave, so we're constantly missing it. Going, this isn't very fun. And then we accidentally catch the small piece of it. We're like, that was it! And we convince ourselves that the small piece of it is actually how it's supposed to feel. Right. And it's not spectacular, so we're like, maybe it's not that good. Right. So that's problem number 1 with this. Problem number 2 is this is still incredibly personality-based. The ability to do this at a high level is personality. I sat here 4 years ago with a handful of problems. questions that I struggled with. One of them was, I'm not Art Williams. I'm not 6-time state high school football champion in Atlanta, Georgia. I love art. But when art tells the story, when I moved, what I did was I wrote these letters. I wrote 23 letters. I took out my coaching book and I put 23 letters. And I said, hey, there's something I'd like to talk to you about. I'd like to sit down and share some things with you. All time I'd like to share this with you. And you know what? All I did is I ended up only seeing 11 of them. Because I built the #1 hierarchy in the world. Only seeing 11. Kind of feel bad for 12, 13, 14, 15, but just never got to it. Guess what? I could write 23 letters to all the state high school football coaches in the community. And say, I got to say, I really like to share with you. I really think you'd be good at it. I really think. And ain't none of them going to come talk.
Right. I
am not Bill Whittle. We already had the height conversation. Right? But I'm not. You go to LSU, I'm not big in the community. And when this happened 4 years ago, Bill Whittle was he was killing it and all this other stuff. And I'm like, man, it just seems like he walks on water. Like everyone, just all these great people come out of the woodwork. And then every time you hear them on TV, they're like, I found Mr. Whittle. And I did this. And I'm like, I'm not Bill Whittle. I'm not Art Williams. I'm not Bill Whittle.
Right.
I'm a 22-year-old waiter. I'm a little kid from Iowa. I moved to California. I don't know a single person that I went to college with. Not one. I couldn't tell you a first or a last name of anyone I went to college with. I was at UCLA for 4 years. You go on my Facebook, my LinkedIn, I don't have a single friend. That's stupid. That's the only word for it. But I had no relation. I didn't know I was there to develop. I thought I was there to get the degree.
Right.
That was what was important. No, it turns out. Didn't need the degree as many as the relationships would have helped. I didn't know that. I'm not Bill Whittle. I've never been a big relationship guy. People bug the hell out of me. Not you, but everyone else, right? Right? I'm an acquirer. I bug the hell out of people. It just, I sleep fine. This is the problem for me. Because I can teach the theory of this. No, Wade can do this. They made a drink after him in a bar. You understand? When you go to a bar and they make a drink after you, that's a good thing.
Not good for your liver.
Not good for your liver, but for your social status, at least if you're talking about bars. There are people that are really, Robin can do this. Natural gifted people. Now, I don't believe it's natural gifted because I know how hard he works and I know how hard she works to be able to do this. It's a cop-out to say, I can't. If this is what I have to do, this is what I'll do. How do I know that? Because I built this piece of crap for the largest company in the planet. So I know we can do anything we need to do, but it's just not comfortable.
Right.
And I'm a pretty aggressive guy. What about the folks that aren't as aggressive?
Right.
It is hard for me to think about doing this, in all reality. What about the folks that are part-time, that are here because they want to make extra money and they want to help people, and the idea of building a business is great and making passive income is fantastic, and if everything worked out great, they'd love to be a team owner. This is fantastic. And they struggle and fight through every generation of this, every iteration of these steps. That's a pretty big problem. And it could very easily turn more into this.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we know this is critical because this is the dilemma, so this is the solution for our business,
right,
for the way we're running. It's so funny. Totally off the beaten path. These stories are fun for me, and I have so much fun doing this. But I get to this point, right? Like right this point in the conversation where people are They've been sitting for about 45 minutes. They're trying to understand what's going on. It sounds good. But I'm kind of talking about some not so really positive and a little bit of depressing stuff. And people are like, oh, God. And right now it's nervous. Like, this is nerve-wracking time for me as a speaker to go through. Because if I lose somebody right here, they don't actually hear the next 40 minutes. It's a really fascinating time, like right this moment. It's one of my favorite times because it's like the eye of a needle. Like, it's from a competitive standpoint, like I really enjoy it. Like, this is one of my favorite moments because I'm like, this is where you can lose. Because there's a journey that goes through, but it's a really, and I've never had this conversation, so I don't do this all the time, but it's like, you guys are all my family, right? So like, this is one of my, if you ever want to know me, this is like one of my favorite and most uncomfortable moments ever. Like right now, like I have butterflies right now. I am so uncomfortable right now because I know what's coming and I know how hard we've worked to get right here. So if I'm screwing up, don't let me lose you for the next little bit. Give me the benefit of the doubt. And if you're having fun and you're totally like uncomfortable and nervous and hoping and you only believe it'll make sense at the end because you trust me, that's awesome because we're going to have some fun on the next piece of this. But this is real. And I think it's critical, guys, that you understand that this stuff is real. Because when you're telling the story and you're telling folks about this stuff, if you lose them here and you don't know you lost them, they're not going to hear the rest of it and you're going to think it's them. And you're going to think I'm lucky. And both of those are bullshit. And we're not going to be a part of it. We're going to grow, we're going to get better, we're going to get stronger. And you know what? When you lose somebody or you screw up the conversation, you're going to call them back and go, we need to redo it again. Because I know where I stopped. I know where I lost you. And that's on me, not on you. Right. And the cool thing is, if you're more focused on developing the relationships than making the sale, you got plenty of time. I worked really hard on all of the relationships in this room so that when I thread a needle, every once in a while, I screw it up. But if the relationship's there, we get another shot. Right. This is fun. Because I like big problems. And this is a really big problem. Now the fun part was, this piece of paper, Victor, took 9 months. This piece of paper took a year. We explained this piece of paper in 17 minutes. And it took us 9 months. 17 minutes is a little bit more fun. Right. Now that it's done. So, sorry. Is it hot in here? Can I turn the air? Yeah. Are you cold? Okay, good. That must be hot.
It's not funny.
There are certain people that they're like, it's really comfortable in here. This is fantastic. Like there are gonna be 3 people passing out oxygen. Okay, so y'all excited? Yes. So this is a legitimate. Now it's a viable solution. I mean, it's fun. We can run this. You know why? Because I've worked really, really hard on this, and Robin and I worked really, really hard on this, and Serge worked really, really hard on this, and Wade worked really, really hard on this. And like we're a year away from being able to have this legitimately if nothing else happens. The relationships and the stuff that's starting to happen, click, 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 through this stuff. Why? Because we're attracting great people. The people on my draft board right now, I am so fired up for, it's ridiculous. Right? So we had to start looking at this and start going, okay, what are we doing? So before we go to the answer to that, we're going to go now to the third conversation, right? Because we got to look at this and say, okay, what are we doing? We're playing to hear. We understand the theoretical of what's going on, and we understand that we've got to grow, and this is something that we've got to confront, but how are we going to do it? See, at the end of the day, in order to compete, in order to introduce ourselves to the country, by June of 2015, we need players, starters, captains, and team owners. We have a goal, NSD. That means we need at least one more RVP and we need $100,000. We need 150 recruits a month and $100,000 of live production in a month. We did 0, 0, 0 in June. The hierarchy did like 2 recruits in high grade. So in essence, in the next year, we have to grow from 2 or 3 recruits to 150 a month, and from $3,000 of production to $100,000 of live production a month in a year. That is a BHAG. A big, hairy, audacious goal. Brian Tracy calls it a BHAG. A big, hairy, audacious goal. From 0 to 150 recruits and $100,000 and an RVP promotion in a year. What if you don't? Okay. You're not going to spite me. I'm going to go get up the next day and breathe. That's a critical component because I'm an adult. Who's in charge of me and my mind? Me. Can I function like I'm going to work like snot to get this done? And if it doesn't happen, we're going to get up and keep going.
Right.
Both of those can exist because I'm an adult.
Right.
To a child, you can't. Ty can't function with both of those mindsets.
Right.
Brett and Ty were outside yesterday, and they each had their bats, and they were on the tee, and Brett put his bat down somewhere and lost it. They're in our front yard, but he lost his bat. Comes in hysterically crying. I can't find my bat. I'm like, homie, you didn't leave the driveway, right? He's like, no. You didn't give it Red Bull. He goes, no. Then it's on the property. We know this to be fact. Now he's 12 and autistic. And so I'm teaching him, at 12 and high-functioning autistic, what happens to your brain when you panic? It shuts down. We don't panic. The single most important thing I'm teaching these children at this age is that we don't panic. I've been working on it for a year. For a year, I've been actively working on we don't panic. It'll take another 6 months to a year. But by the time VP is 13 and Ty's 11, they won't panic. Can you imagine being your entire life from 11 years old and the concept of panicking doesn't own you?
Right.
But it'll take 2 or 3 years to institute. He's sobbing. I'm like, go inside. I have no interest in being around you when you're panicking because we can't do anything. Oh, stop panicking. So he's panicking that he's panicking.
Right.
I am not a compassionate and supportive person when you're working through your hurdles. I take gasoline and throw it on. I do. Why? Because the more out of control this child gets during this conversation, the more reference points I get in the future. Now, my responsibility to my children is to teach them this. My responsibility to you is not to teach them. And your responsibility to your team is not to teach them to be an adult. Your job is to find adults. Surround yourself with people you like and trust. Now, if you like and trust children, then surround yourself with them. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't let my kids act like that.
Right.
This is my goal. This is our goal. This is what we talk about. We're going to work like stink to get it done. And if it happens, we're going to celebrate it. If it doesn't happen, we're going to keep working. Does this make sense? Okay. So, in order to do it, we need more players. Why? Because we have one goal. I have one measurable goal. On a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month goal. One goal. One. Not 7, not 4,000. When it comes to growing my distribution company, I have one. Dear, do you know what that goal is? 1 player IBA a week. 1 player IBA a week. 1 player IBA a week. When I get 1 player IBA consistently a week, then what do I want? 2 player IBAs a week. And when I get 2, I want 3, then 4 player IBAs a week. And when I get 4 player IBAs a week, what do I want? Well, and then I want 1 starter IBA a week. So on player IBA a week and starter IBA a week. What's the difference? A player IBA a week. So let me list this down. My players. Wade, Don and Kat, Cindy, Yadira, Lisa, Joseph, David, Derek, Yubi. Okay, these are the players. 5 weeks ago, these were the players. Yadira, can I convince you to recruit a new associate a week? Do I have the ability to do that? I haven't yet. That's not a bad thing. That's just a reality. Right. Cindy, can I convince you to do? You want to, but then, Don, I can't. So how do I ensure? Because I have 1 goal, Richard. 1 player IBA a week. How do I make sure that I get 1 player IBA a week?
You have to do that.
No, because that's a direct. No, a player IBA is someone who's licensed outside of me that's growing their business.
Get more players.
Get more players. It's the only thing I can do. Well, there's 2 things. I can get more players and create a culture where people are like, oh, I should grow my draft board so that I can get my roster so that I can get players.
Right.
So if we can get the player to say, I need players because I want to become a starter, the only way to become a player is they need people on the roster. The only way to get on the roster is get on the draft board and work their farm system. If we get our players to start working their farm system and developing their draft board, they're going to get people on the roster. When a player gets someone on the roster, I have a player that got an IBA.
Right.
Does this make sense?
Yes.
I'll do this again.
Slower.
Okay.
Much slower.
We want team owners. The only way to get team owners is captains. The only way to get captains is starters. The only way to get starters is players. Yadira wants to be a starter. At some point, she'd like to quit her job. In order to do that, she needs to become at least a captain. But she can't become a captain until she becomes a starter. Right now, she's a player. She's licensed. She's learning her presentations. She's getting her securities license. And she's starting to develop her mind. In order to become a starter, Yadira says, I need players. Because a starter is a player with players. So the only way Yadira becomes a starter is Yadira is a player and she's got players. Which means, right now, she has no licensed people. A player is someone who's licensed and actively participating. So, in order for Yadira to become a starter, which is a player with players, she needs players. That make sense? So Yadira goes, the only way to get players is to get people on my roster. So Victor and Yesenia are on her roster. So she goes, part 1, I need to help Victor and I need to help Yesenia get licensed. I need to inspire and motivate them to get licensed. Why? Because as they get licensed, then they can start learning. And right now, I will be working with Victor, and I'll be working with Yadira, but I'll be working with Victor because Yadira doesn't know how to work with Victor. And I'll be working with Yesenia because Victor or Yadira doesn't know how to work with Yesenia. But I'll be working with Yadira because I want Yadira to be a starter, so I'm going to be teaching Yadira how to work with Victor, and I'm going to help go through that process, but I'm going to do a lot of the work with Victor while I'm helping with Yadira. But the goal is, down the line, for Yadira to be working with Victor most of the time because she's learning how to grow her team. Does that make sense? Okay. So Yadira goes this, but Yadira goes, well, he's got at least 3 up there, and I think I want like 5 or 6 to really get the same because I don't know who's going to actively participate. So I need more players. So how does Yadira get more players? She's got to get more people on her roster. How does she get more on her roster? She does her draft board. So she calls her market, tells the story, and recruits them to the roster. When she picks up a roster IBA, That is, for me, because she's one of my players, a player IBA. So Yadira hires Claudia. Claudia goes on Yadira's roster. But that's a player IBA for me for that week. So I go, boom, Yadira picked up an IBA. Let's say next week, Wade picks up an IBA. He picks up Pierre's IBA. Boom, here's a second player. So now Yadira picked it up the first week of July. Wade picked it up the second week of July. Joseph picks up Beatrice's IBA the third week of July. Check. Richard picks up Cora's IBA the last week of July. So the first week of July, the second week of July, the third week of July, the fourth week of July, I have four IBAs from players that month. That's an average of one player IBA that I didn't go pick up. Cindy, does this make sense? Well, then what? You're like, well, all these people are picking up. That's some BS, man. I've been working to develop my market. I mean, I like Yadira, but she's not the only one that's going to do it. So now all of a sudden, in August, Yadira picks up an IBA. Victor gets his license, picks up an IBA, and Cindy goes, heck no, she picks up an IBA. And Don and Kat are going, this is ridiculous. They pick up an IBA. And Wade's like, okay, here we go. We pick up 2 IBAs. Now all of a sudden, there's 2 or 3 player IBAs a week. Does this make sense?
Right.
The problem is, for the last 2 months, this group's picked up 2 IBAs in the last 3 months. That's an IBA a month, not an IBA a week. And so, one, we can create cool meetings and conversations and do all this. But Joseph's right. The best thing we can do is go, okay, well, Oscar's taking his test. Candy's taking her test. Caesar's taking his test. Kat's taking his test. Victor's taking his test. Yesenia's taking her test. Phil's taking his test. Frank and Crystal are taking their test. Paula's taking her test. So in the month of July, we're going to have 10 or 11 people take and pass their test. When these people take and pass their test, are they on the roster anymore? Nope. Where are they? They're players. So now this entire group goes over here, and now we go from 4 to 20 people. When we've got 20 players on the team, what's the likelihood of one being able to pick up an IBA a week when we've got 20 compared to 4 on the list? So how do I grow? I can grow my players, which instills 1 player IBA a week, then 2, then 3, then 4. Now, do I want 50 player IBAs a week? No. I want Wade running his team. Why? Because I want Wade to be an RVP. So we need to get Wade to become a starter so he can become a captain so he can become an RVP. So I want to get I got to do everything I can do to help Wade transition from player to starter. So he's going to recruit some folks, but I got to teach Wade how to start teaching his folks and how to get them through the process. Why? Because when Wade's an RVP, if we run through this process, when Wade's an RVP, he knows how to work with his draft board, he knows how to work with his roster, he knows how to work with his players, he knows how to work with his starters, he knows how to work with his captains. So now he's an independent owner that's running the system that gets to be creative in Wade, and there's a fundamental foundation that's built, and not a little burger. An interdependent relationship. So all of a sudden, they're like, wait, we got to get you the starter. Wade's like, I got to get you the starter. We're like, yeah, we got to get you the starter. Peter's like, I got to get the starter. Don and Kat are like, we got to get to the starter. Okay, well, how do you get the starter? It's not politics. You get started, you got to have some players. Well, why? Well, because starters, players, and players. But I know all the presentations. Great. So you'll be a really effective player. But until you have people that you're instructing and learning, because it's very different knowing this story and being able to tell it. Just like it's very different being able to tell it and being able to help somebody else learn how to tell it. Those are 3 distinct skills. And what most people do is they get caught on one of them, thinking it's all 3. Well, I'm really good at telling that story. Yeah. I, in my old business, am the worst in the country. If you take the 25 to 30 best builders from 1999 to 2009, I'm in that group. And I would be dead last. Dead last at the ability to teach people to teach people. Running the system. Dead last. Based on the tangible, transferable results. Now, the top 20 is a pretty high, I mean, the air is pretty high. I mean, so we're talking, like, I could stand, right? But if you list the top 20, we went for a year realizing what I thought I was saying and what you thought you were hearing were two distinct things. So I'm communicating, thinking that this is being translated, and for the group, this was being received.
Right.
Well, when there's that breakdown, nothing's being translated on what actually works, but the people receiving it are convinced that they're receiving that they're hearing what's being said, and I'm convinced that they're hearing because they're responding to me in direct line with what I'm saying, but they're hearing something vastly different. Who's responsible? All of us. I don't own that, and they don't own it. It was the combination of it. It's the reality. So we built an entire infrastructure to do everything we can to not have that happen again.
Right.
You lay in the corner and cry? I've been here so long. It's America. It doesn't care. They'll plant shit on you. Become fertilizer. This country doesn't care. Why am I gonna dust myself off and go solve the problems?
Right.
What else is there? Spend the next 5 years convincing the world that they're wrong for not understanding me? Well, I said everything right. They should respond better. Okay, you can do that. It's a great thing about America. They got signs outside. Build them. Do what you want. Why are you rich? Right. I want to save 70 million families, and I want to build something I'm proud of. Right. So what do? We want one-player IVA. John, what that means is you and I do exactly the same things every day. There's nothing different. You need a player IVA a week. Don and Kat need, for this to work the way they want them to, one player IVA a week. When they get 1, 2, then 3, then 4, then it starts. They're same game plan. Wade, same game plan. Cindy, same game plan. Joseph, same game plan. That's me. Exactly. That's the same game plan. There's nothing different. Now, the number might change, but it's nothing different.
Right.
You know what that means? I got to turn to my farm system. I got to build my draft board. I got to build my roster. And I got to build my players. Because as I build my players and create a culture, statistically, there's a better chance someone's going to want to come play me.
Right.
And then I've got to teach my players to build their farm system, develop their draft board, support their roster, and instruct their players. And from that, some are going to want to become starters. And from that, some are going to want to become captains. And from that, some are going to want to become team members. Does this make sense? So now we're like, Cindy, you and I do exactly the same things every day. Well, we're supposed to. I might not do it. You might. Guess what? If you do it better than I do it, you're going to kick my butt. Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun? Joseph, you do this better. If you develop more in your draft board than I do, you're going to kick my tail. Now, I override you, but other than that, but it doesn't matter. But we're not doing this for money anyway. We're doing this for the game and the play and the opportunity, man. You can build this thing bigger than I do.
Right.
Richard, you can kick my tail. If you develop a better farm system than I do, more draft board, right? Stronger roster and more players. Kick my tail. Now, I'm a competitive guy, so I might not let you, but we'll go have some fun. But here's the thing. We now get to take the magic away. There's no politics.
Yep.
This is what we get to build. Now, check this out. Because this is all we're actually doing, we're going to get really good at developing our farm system, aren't we?
Yep.
I mean, if it's all we're really doing, we should get really pretty good at it, shouldn't we?
Yep.
And if we get really good at that, we get good at telling the story. Now, if you're not good at telling the story, I can't tell you. If you don't have people coming to AAA'z night and going, hey, so it's about the same, you're not good at telling the story.
Right.
Like, that's how I know who's good at telling the story. When people are like, yeah, that was really good, I've been thinking about that, and they start, right? You are great at telling the story. You know how I know you're great at telling the story? You might not know you're great at telling the story, but you're great at telling the story. You know how I know you're great at telling the story? Because Victor sat in my office 3 weeks ago, the first time I met him since he was here, and he broke down the access gap like butter. And he heard me once. Now, he's smart and good and articulate, but you had to talk to him. Did you talk to him about it? Okay? You're good at telling the story. Now, he's good at processing, but you prioritize the story. You could suck at the story, but if you prioritize it, someone is going to receive it. You're phenomenal at it because he broke it down better than I tell it. That's an indicator that you're working on it. That's what we want. That's our business. That's someone transitioning from player to starter. Well, you just like to hear it. No, I'm thinking this is the stuff we're working on. Not look, and I haven't done this very often, and I won't do this very often. The general's warning, because I said you're good, didn't mean that I said anyone in the room sucks. Let's make sure this is perfectly clear. At no point did I say anyone else in the room is terrible. Okay, and if you did that, you own that stuff. I saw 2 faces go. And I'm like, really? We're at that space again? Okay. But no, I'm just not going to encourage it. I'm not going to feed it.
Right.
That's not about, and I'm no longer going to be nervous about that. I want to celebrate the people that are taking the action and the people that aren't. Be stronger than Brett. He's an autistic 12-year-old.
Right.
But watch. So this is the story. So as we get better at draft board, this is what we spend our time doing. Right? And when we tell the story, people are going to say yes and no. And the ones that say yes, we're going to get good at this because that's how we create the player IBA, huh? But the ones who say no are going to go on the scout team. And guess what? They're going to go into developing our market. So we're going to get really good at this because this is really all we do, isn't it? That's really all we do, isn't it? So then this isn't scary anymore, is it? Because if that's all we do is we develop starters in one player IBA a week, then we're actually developing the skill set that we need. Now, it might take us a little while, but we're actually developing the expertise we need to be able to fill the pool so that we can grow this. So this isn't actually a scary page anymore. Because all I need you to do and all I'm doing is developing my farm system, because as I develop my farm system, I'm working with my scout team, driving that, developing my farm system, building my draft boards, and build my draft board, get it on the roster. That's all we're doing is we just keep growing this list, and as this group grows.
Right.
Does this make sense?
Yes.
So over the next 2 years, shouldn't we get really, really good at this? And if we got a bunch of us really good at this and we do this, shouldn't we be able to fully fund the pool?
Yes.
So we can explode. Take us 2 years. Joseph's like, I've only been back 3 months. That's fine. 2 years, no big deal. Wade's like, I was here 4 years ago. 2 more years kind of sucks. It is what it is.
Right.
Or is it? Because 2 years does not solve that problem. This doesn't say June 2016. We don't have till June 2016. We can have the solution, it's just going to take too long. Best we find a better solution while continuing to run this.
Yeah.
Today might go about 8 minutes long. I'm trying to get past this stuff, but I just needed to, but we're doing good. So I'm going to try to get it done, but I don't want to shortchange this conversation, so we'll get it. So I'm just telling you, if you need to leave, go ahead. So we're going to keep doing this. You with me?
Yes.
But the dilemma is, what do we do in the interim? Because we're growing our licenses, and we want to compete and we want to grow. All right. Enter 401k, it's 457. Okay. We are going to build the first, and probably the only, multi-commission channel in the 401k space. But we are not about the 401k business. Okay. We have 3 strengths in a 401k conversation. Today, I'm not gonna. We're gonna have lots of modules on this, but I just want to highlight this 3 things. There's the cost, employee interaction, and the fiduciary responsibility. Cost. 401ks cost money. Here's the reality of the situation. You don't make any money in 401ks. I'm going to be traveling. We've got Intercoast, all this other stuff. The reality is, next June, after a year, I'll probably spend $8,000 or $9,000 in capital to get the Intercoast 401k up and running. And a year from right now, I'll probably earn $300 a month in passive income, which is $3,600 a year. So it'll take me 3 years to make back just to break even. Why, in God's name, would I do that?
Build relationships.
Okay. Why? What's the trust relationship do?
Allies, advocates, and associates.
The problem is that I'm going into employees. Can I really recruit in good conscience? Can I actively recruit employees of a company that's asking me to come in and service them on their retirement needs?
No.
Isn't that a conflict?
Yes.
A little manipulative?
Yes.
So, and that's not how we do this.
Right.
We come from strength and offense. So why, other than the fact that I'm going to the Red Sox Yankee game at Fenway Park, so excited. The kids are so mad. So is my mouth. Other than that, why would we do it? Why does it make any sense? What's that?
Sure.
Well, yeah, but there's not a big red cross downstairs. Like, this is a for-profit company.
Because you get the message across, and you get the referral, and you get people talking to other people. And
So we can build brand and goodwill.
Because you're not going to be able to talk to all those employees at the same time, so you need more people to go with you to start building confidence, start building the skill level of profitability.
A leverageable tool. Now, this is critical for multiple reasons. One, everyone else in the industry is going after the 401k because it's how they eat. They want to get the roles. They want to get the owner's money. They want to do all of this other stuff. Do we want that stuff? Yeah, but it's a byproduct. We're going to get it. We're going to take it. We're going to roll over. We're going to do all sorts of other stuff. Look, I truly believe that we'll create $50,000 to $70,000 of profit through this 401k in the next year. So I'll invest $8 to really receive $50,000 of profit. Right? So I'm not throwing good money after bad. But that's not the purpose. The purpose is one of the schools is in West Covina. Joseph just passed his test. Where do you live? La Puente, West Covina. So on one of the days, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to say, my friend Joseph, who just passed his test, hey, Joseph, we've got to get you developing your market. Joseph says, of course I have to develop my market. Hey, Joseph, it's going to take some time. Of course it's going to take some time. It's okay that it takes some time. Yes, but I want to get Joseph's full-time in his job. He's not quitting his job. We don't want Joseph to quit his job right now. Joseph, but I go, Joseph, do you think maybe you could be sick on, I don't know, a Wednesday? And Joseph's like, well, if I need to be, I guess I could be sick on a Wednesday. I'm like, Joseph, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit your butt next to this, and you're going to watch me have 21 conversations in a 7-hour period of time. Now, Joseph watches me have 21 conversations, the same conversation over and over and over. Not the 401k conversation, the planning and the needing and the goals and the this and the that and the overall, because we're going to gather assets and write life and we're going to do all this other stuff. If Joseph watches me do that over the 21 times, what do you think happens to Joseph's skill? What do you think happens to Joseph's confidence when he realizes that there aren't that many questions that people ask? And there's a way to answer them, and you can ask them and answer them and develop and create a relationship. What do you think happens to that? Joseph? Let's say out of the 21, there's 5 or 6 of them that really connect with Joseph. And they want extra financial needs analysis and extra game plans and all this other stuff. Do I live in La Puente? No. Who lives a block from La Puente? My friend Joseph. If I go, Joseph, why don't you develop over there? It might take a month or 2 or 3 to get in and develop all these relationships. Hey, why don't you and I work together and you learn how to do this stuff, and if you do it, you'll assign me seconds, so you split it, this business, you start going. So is that going to increase Joseph's profit?
Yes.
And is Joseph going to get coachability, going to get coached one-on-one on each of these processes?
Yes.
Now, what happens next? This is the part I want you to see how all this stuff comes together. What happens next? So Joseph leaves. 21. He's got 5 or 6 people he's going to sit with. He saw this back to back. He knows he's going to make a little bit of money. What happens next?
You might get one recruit out of this.
Maybe, but probably not, because they're employees.
But they might want to do it part-time the way we do.
They might. But Joseph's going to go home. And Joseph's going to talk to Beatrice. And what is Joseph going to talk to Beatrice about? That he had a good day. And Joseph's going to have the opportunity to start drinking. Let's say that Sunday, there's a birthday party. The people in Joseph's market. And they go, Joseph, how are things going? And Joseph's learned how to communicate what we're doing because we taught him on how to communicate. He's developed a skill in his confidence. He's been telling the story. And he starts to go, oh my God, we just did this and this going on and this is crazy. And he tells that story to people in his market. Is that a story any of them are expecting to hear from Joseph or about Primerica?
Nope.
What is a response Joseph might receive from someone in his market who didn't expect this conversation, specifically about Primerica? Who maybe is a business owner?
Can you tell me more?
I didn't know you did that. Now I have a question. What do you think the likelihood that Joseph and Beatrice today know somewhere between 3 and 15 small business owners that have between 15 and 75 employees, one generation, one step away, that they either know of in their lukewarm market, their frozen market, or their warm market? What do you think the likelihood of them knowing those people? Pretty good?
Yeah.
How about the likelihood that you know those people? Pretty good? Well, what if over the next year you cultivated relationships? And remember, We can compete on cost. But what do traditional people do in the 401k system to their employees? Here. Here. If you want it, great. Here. Here. What do? We want to sit down, we want to teach you, we want to arm this, we want to share the information, we're going to do planning, here's how the investments work, here's how this works, here's how planning, here's the Rule 72, here's dollar cost averaging, here's access to a financial needs analysis, we'll do it free. I have a question. If one of the people wants Joseph to come to their house 11 times in the next 4 months to keep tweaking the 401, the FNA, Joseph's a newly licensed person. What's the likelihood of Joseph, a newly licensed person, willing to go to that house 11 times to help tweak it? What do you think the likelihood is? Really good. What's the likelihood that I'm going to? No, but Joseph is. Why? Because he's new, excited, fired up, and wants to learn. It's like, wow, this is awesome! Right or wrong?
Yes.
You understand that means we constantly have an influx of brand new people that are running through this pool that we can keep taking back. See, we get to go to the owners and say, look, we can make sure your employees get one-on-one, real-life help all the way through the process all the time. How can we ensure it? Well, what if Billy decides not to do the business? We can introduce someone else in there because we constantly have an influx of new roster people to plug them in. And they're so excited and fired up to create it because they're like, woohoo, I have someone to go see. Because I need to increase my skill and my confidence, my profitability, and my coaching. Because we're growing a distribution company, not selling 401ks.
Right.
So we get to use it as a tool. Does this make sense?
Yes.
So now all of a sudden, let's just say, oh, and then the fiduciary, like the people who are responsible for these things, they are so liable, it's ridiculous. And none of them have any idea. None of them, no idea how unbelievably exposed they are. I had no idea, and I had no idea. We're building structures and support systems to make sure that they are protected so that it doesn't even fall on them.
Are you talking about the employer?
The employer. So we're building a fiduciary support system run by Access Support that they don't have to pay. That's just going to facilitate and take care of them, make sure that they're protected, and that they do the filings and the minutes and all the things that need to be done so they don't have to think about it.
Right.
Why? Because we have a background support company that can do it, that can support our part-timers to be able to grow.
Right.
Why? Why? Because we need to grow. We need to grow. We need more people on our roster. What is this? What is the number one? What is my number one goal? One player IBA a week. What's the problem with recruiting in Primerica? When Don's trying to recruit Bill, somewhere in the recess of Don's brain, Don says, Bill, if you get in and write a sale, I'm going to get an offer. Why am I recruiting Bill? Well, because I need to grow, and I need to train Bill, and I need to get production from Bill, and I need Bill's market, and if Bill does this, I get overrides. And the more people that I get licensed and trained, the more overrides I get. That's not something wrong, but that's
right.
Is that true?
Yes.
Would it help Bill to do the business? Of course. But is Don really always thinking about how much it's going to help Bill when he's talking to Bill, or could Don be thinking about how it's going to help Don?
Right.
Because Don's a person. There's nothing wrong with that, but we should be able to give language to it.
Right.
Which means when I'm talking to Wade, if I'm trying to get Wade to do something for me, if my true motivation is to try to get Wade to do something for me, I can't tell him that.
Right.
But if I'm not an expert at communication, could Wade be feeling ucky and not even know why?
Yes.
And I have myself convinced, oh, I only care about Wade. Look at the words. You can read a transcript of the words that I said. All of these words are built for Wade. But the transcript doesn't carry the tone, intonation, and the sense and the feeling. And if people think that you're manipulating them, sooner or later, they're going to go, your interest and my interest are not one.
Right.
You're recruiting me for a contest. You're recruiting me for Kenny. You're recruiting me because of what you want. I'm a means to an end. And when people feel like a means to an end, they don't come around.
No.
Right.
Look, there was a period of time in my professional business that I didn't have good stickability. I've been really pretty good for a really long time at being able to keep people that don't make any money. For a really long time, I've been pretty good at getting people to come to the meetings, go through, develop relationships, but there was a period of time, Don, where I wasn't. Guess what I had to do? I had to look in the mirror and go, people aren't coming and sticking around. Why? There's something I'm doing that's not keeping that space. That's not anyone else. That's me. That's a hard question to ask. But once you get the answer, you can change it. And I had to realize, oh, I was trying to get from. I didn't know I was trying to get from, and it was really hard for me to want to accept that because it didn't make me feel good.
Right.
But whether I accepted it or not was irrelevant. No one was coming around.
Exactly.
So if Richard's no one coming around, and we have a great opportunity, and I'm talking to a bunch of people, the common denominator is me.
Right.
I shifted that, and I think I'm relatively good at keeping people around now. Why? Because Cindy, you know I love you, and I care about you, and Arturo, and I care about the kids, and I want you profitable, and I want you successful, but our relationship isn't contingent upon it. But watch. So all of a sudden, y'all having fun? Yep. One player IBA a week. This is the goal. This is what we do, right? So, but now all of a sudden, so we're like, okay. So the dynamic is, I'm going to recruit Wade because I want Wade over. I want to override Wade. Out of the way. Wait a second. I got a question. So Yadira a couple days ago sends me a text. I can tell the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
My boss called me into a meeting. I'm not sure why. Okay. Good luck. She's like, oh my God, we have Mass Mutual 401k and they're talking about changing to John Hancock because of the fees and the cost. What do I say? Say this. Okay, I'll try. We go back and forth. Yadira's talking with the boss, with her boss. They're in the process of transitioning 401ks. Yadira on Monday is reaching out to the boss saying, look, I think you should schedule time. I think you should meet with Sears. We're going to go through. Are we going to get it? I have no idea. Are we going to have some fun with it? Yes. Is it cool as anything? Yes. Because we said this was going to happen.
Right.
See, it's easy to say, it's all about to be tied together. Sears, you're mad. No, that's not me. I'm not R. Williams, am I? I'm not a 6-time state coach. But you know what I can do? I can build a great relationship with Yadira. And I can arm and treat and develop relationships and go through. And when the opportunity presents itself, now all of a sudden Yadira has the possibility to get this 401k. I didn't get this 401k. Brett, you're lucky you're able to do this. No, I have a great relationship with Yadira. She's got the greatest opportunity in the history of the world. All I do is recruit Yadira. And as I recruit Yadira and develop a relationship, cultivate and get through the process and develop a market and all this other stuff, sooner or later there's an opportunity where all of a sudden, oh my God, there's 90 employees and a possibility. Sears, you're lucky. You're right. But I'm not R. Williams.
Right.
And I don't got to be R. Williams. You don't got to be R. Williams. Everyone in this room, I truly believe, knows between 2 and 25 small business owners that have between 9 and 60 to 100 employees. And if over the next 6 months, year, 2 years, you develop relationships with them, there's a platform for a conversation that we're going to get really, 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 really good at. But I got a question. Y'all having fun?
Yep.
Let's say I get in. His name is Steve. I get into Steve. Now here's the thing. You give me a Steve, we are getting this. No. We're getting it. 1, because I'm just obnoxious enough to say we can get it. 2, I'm the worst salesman in the world, but I'm a pretty good closer. And 3, because no one can do what we do.
Right.
No one can do what we do. John Hancock, I can't do it. Last year, out of the 90 employees, the 401k grew by $100,000. I want you to think about what this means. They make everything public, which is bizarre. 90 employees. There was $1,068,000. $1,173,000 a year later. What does that mean?
each only got a little over $1,000 in growth.
Yeah.
And that's not a lot.
It means one of a handful of things. One, no participation.
Yeah.
Two, small contributions.
For investment.
Three, for investment. We know those three things before we walked in the door. The market last year grew at 20%. If this was invested in a conservative, in an asset allocated portfolio, it grew at 11%. 11%, $110,000. Let alone all the contributions.
Right.
Which means there's 90 employees that have no idea, they're not participating. If they are, they're not putting in any money, and they don't know what the investments are.
Right.
We know that before we walk in the door. Do we have a solution for that?
Yes.
Joseph, come with me to West Covina. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Now, this isn't the fun one. Well, it's kind of. I got a question. Dear, if we talk with Steve, if I talk with Steve, you work there, you can't do this. It's a conflict. Right? Which kind of sucks. Do we have a solution to that conflict?
Well, you get to, you're talking.
That solves me. I'm fine with that, but that doesn't solve that. That's not a solution for her.
Whoever she has license can go with you.
Her team.
She'll work.
Her team goes in and writes it. She splits the business and overrides the business. So she benefits, she profits from it, plus her team leaders get stronger. Right? Why? Because what is this about? This is about growing skill, confidence, profitability, and coachability. So if Victor goes with us to be able to sit with them at 10 or 15 appointments, Victor gets better at skill, confidence, profitability, and coachability. Which means Yadira's business gets stronger and her assets grow.
Yep.
Does this make sense?
Yep.
I have a question. Does Yadira have enough people licensed? Does she have enough players to help service 90 people?
Nope.
So, what's Yadira going to do besides give away lots of profit? But Yadira is going to give away lots of profit because she doesn't have enough players. But we don't want Yadira to give away a lot of profit. But we're not going to not have the conversation with Steve because that's not in alignment with what he needs. But Yadira is going to donate profit to other people. That doesn't serve her family. So now Yadira has an opportunity to rethink her farm system and her draft. If you and I knew that we were getting this 401k and it was going to go live in October, would you have your securities by October? But what's different? Still want to get the license, but now there's
Probation.
oh. But I put on a couple pounds, but it's okay. I'll keep eating the way I'm eating. Ooh, I hit that number. I'm going to change everything.
Right.
How do we look at the people that we're talking to? When you look at your market, when you look at the people that develop the relationships you have, if you knew that you could help 4 or 5 or 6 part-timers make an extra $500 or $1,000 a month, and all they were doing was developing the 401k clients and the relationships, and we were going to teach them how to do it, would you be able to talk to them a little bit differently?
Mm-hmm.
Now I got a question. Let's say that you had 5 or 6 people that went and did that. After those days, what are they going to do? They're going to go home, aren't they? And when they go home, they're going to talk to their family and their spouse, and they're going to tell the story of what's going on, aren't they? And as they tell that story, do you think they start possibly thinking about some of the relationships that they know and have?
Yeah.
And as they start actively cultivating and developing those relationships, does that enhance your business? And then all of a sudden, if someone gets into a conversation where a Steve happens for them, aren't you in a position to go, let's totally have the conversation? The only problem is, Victor, you don't have enough people. And as this starts to pop 2 or 3 and 5 and 6 and 8, don't we have a stronger environment where, Rachel, even if we don't have one for you and things that you're trying to cultivate and developing, what's happening to others, right? Aren't you saying, man, I got to grow and I got to get prepared because I don't need to be our Williams.
Right.
I need to recruit the greatest part-time opportunity, and they went to the greatest part-time opportunity in the history of the world. Because I don't need Joseph to quit his job when he comes to me to the West Covina School. I don't want him to quit his job. We want 50, 75, 100 relationships. If we can give them 5 to 6 and get them understanding, now all of a sudden they start cultivating and developing, it's that much easier to grow.
Right.
Does this make sense? So now I have a question. If between, we'll be done in 3 minutes. July and August, we have to get people licensed. Our Saturday trainings, we are going to start doing from 9:15 to 10:15, a life insurance training class and a securities training class. From 10:15 to 11 o'clock, we're going to do points of access and developing the market class. We're going to do this for the next foreseeable future. The goal is by January, we are exploding, and from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, we are running these classes. Right? We won't do that till the end of the year, but by the end of the year, the goal is we've got 150 or 200 people coming to the meeting, and we've got 60 or 70 people getting licensed, and from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, we're going to run, and we're going to develop the classes, and we're going to ask for help, and we're going to get those things going, because we need licenses.
Right.
We are going to arm and train. We're going to work on our points of access, and we're going to go through and create this, right? But what happens is, right, we have an AAA'z night July 25th and August 20th. Those are our next 2 AAA'z nights. We got to build to them. Over the next 2 months, my goal is the people in this room actively increase their skills, actively increase their market. Build to the 25th and get people in that room. Build to the 20th and get people in that room. Get our life licenses, get our securities licenses, and get this stuff created. Is it the 20th? Maybe it's the 30th.
The 30th.
The 30th, sorry. July 30th and August 20th. July 30th and August 20th. Use the next 2 months. Saturdays are going to become vital. Saturdays where we're going to work on the skills and the trainings, because guess what? One of the things that we've got to do is to transition from a player to a starter, you've got to be really good at teaching your players.
Right.
So we're going to take people and we're going to get them good at training the life classes and good at training the securities classes. Why? Because learning how to teach somebody else is an integral part of building this thing. So learning how to learn it, learning how to teach it, we're going to use the tools that we have to build the lineup to be able to grow. September through the end of the year, we're going to go on a blitz where we're going to probably get back to AA'z nights every week. We're going to drive this thing. Every meeting's going to count for the leadership team to put together because we've got to get ready. I truly believe that we can get 50, 60 people licensed from today to January 1st. We can get 25, 30, 40 securities licenses. We're going to get 8, 6, 7, 8 401ks. Beginning of next year, we've got all sorts of programs in place to be able to do this. Because come January 1st, everyone in this room is licensed. Everyone in this room is competent. Everyone in this room has their security license. Everyone in this room understands the pool, the systems, and what we're doing. Everyone in this room has a group of people, they're starters that are developing. When we do that, we have the ability to start the year and say, what do you think we can do if we don't have to spend 6 months getting licensed? We don't have to spend 6 months learning this meeting.
Right.
We don't have to spend 6 months battling our own demons on will it work or won't it work or what if it doesn't work for me. I don't have you here on my team. We understand. Cindy's working on it, Joseph's working on it, Don's, we all have this. The beauty of our business is it's the greatest part-time opportunity in the history of the world. And at the end of the day, if you become great at the draft board, build your draft board. Develop relationships. Get people to like and trust you. Tell this story so that everyone in your world understands what you're doing and what you're trying to be a part of. And get good at having people go, I might want to be a part of it. We spend the next 6 months mastering that and leveraging the tools we have. This team, you, not just us, you, this group, will be able to introduce ourselves back in this country. Great things are in front of us, guys. We've worked very, very, very hard to get here. We finished it. So, I love you guys. Hopefully that makes some sense. Let's have some fun. The last little thing I like. I'm going to finish this. This next week, there's no meeting next Saturday, July 5th. Take the weekend, right? Have some fun. Here's my strongest suggestion I could make. Take an hour today. Flush out all of your frozen on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. Friday's ideal. Send your Facebook or your tweets or your texts or your emails to your frozen market. Start the workflows. Go into the Advocate Pro. Develop the relationship. Start the workflow. Excuse me. One of the best times of the year is July 4th to be able to reconnect and start your frozen relationships. It's really easy to say, you know what, I was thinking about you, I tripped on your number, I was thinking about you, this is always a special time of the year. I hope you have a great time with your family and enjoy Independence Day. It's something more than just a fireworks party. You know, you could send that text, that tweet, that Facebook to 10 people, 20 people, 30 people, 50 people, 100 people, and start the process of your frozen thaw. It's a great time to do it. It's also a really easy time not to do it. Get prepared this weekend, and it's really simple. It'll take you an hour, and just run them through the workflows and let the timing go and all that stuff. Really, really good stuff will happen. So just want to make sure that we get that stuff done. Let's have some fun. The month's not over, so we still don't have to end at 0. Just want to let you know we got a couple days left, so there's still possible, right? If anyone wants to participate with us, that would be great, but don't worry about it. We're just going to go from there. I love you guys. Let's have some fun and make it happen. Superstars, come hey!
Yeah.